creativity and ideas. And I think I would just say up front, before I explore it more, clearly both of those scenarios are plausible. We have to acknowledge that as bleak as scenario one is, it kind of is a possible future if we don't do something about it. And I guess it's also worth saying what Peter didn't offer us as a scenario, and I guess I would just want to address this, I don't think there is a scenario where we can kind of carry on as we have been. I don't think we can secure the future of our canal network if we just stick with the status quo. And really, to be a bit unglamorous, the thing that dictates that is just the funding need. The cost of caring for our network is rising, it's pretty eye-watering cost, and therefore we have to find new ways of securing the income that it will need. To go back slightly, to start, I guess, I'd like to acknowledge what has changed in the last 80 years is the scale of the network that we're caring for. I mean, one thing that I suspect even ambitious characters like Aikman would not have imagined that over the last 80 years we'd have seen the Huddersfield Canal reopen through Stanage Tunnel, we'd have seen the Rochdale Canal, we'd seen new connections like the Liverpool Link added and all the rest. So I think it's amazing to see that in 80 years, not just has the network of the 1930s and 40s been retained, but we've seen so much restored and added back. But in a way, of course, that adds to the challenge as we face into the future, because the sheer scale of the network, just keeping it functioning, adds to our challenge, the size of the challenge. Just to reel off some statistics, 2,000 miles, about 10,000 individual assets, 2,700 of them listed structures, 70 of the most regulated reservoirs, the oldest reservoirs in the country, over 1,500 locks, several thousand culverts, etc., etc., and exceptional, unique structures, some of which we didn't even have responsibility for in the 1940s, 50s, like the Tees Barrage, others like the Anderton Boat Lift that have been brought back to life, all needing their own bespoke maintenance regime. So the scale of the network compounds our challenges and means that even now, we can't do everything we'd like to do, and I know many of you who are boaters will be experiencing that firsthand. We do face very difficult trade-offs about how we target our spend, our investment, and often it's our legal responsibilities, our statutory obligations, the risk that we present to public safety governs our choices, not necessarily the things that we would like to do to deliver the greatest benefits to our customers. And those decisions about how we prioritise even now are extremely challenging. Particularly perhaps when much of our investment isn't even visible to customers. And I reckon over half, maybe even as much as 2/3 of our major infrastructure projects are on stuff you can't even see. The reservoir up in the hills, the culvert that runs underneath, strengthening the embankment that the canal runs over, etc. Things that don't matter on a day-to-day basis, but if they ever failed, it would be pretty catastrophic and very quickly would be noticed, not just by boaters. So going back to the two scenarios that Peter presented, I actually think that the difference as we start from today between those two outcomes isn't actually that big. The choices we make now will expand in they will diverge. And so therefore the margins that we face are small. We're already walking, I think, a quite fine line between being in a virtuous circle or instead sliding downwards round a vicious circle. So let me explain. It's almost, to quote Dickens, the Micawber quote about the difference between happiness and misery, if you know that. You're a pound more happiness, a pound less misery beckons. It's a little bit like that for what we face. If we can invest enough in the network to keep it working well, its condition broadly okay, it will continue to draw more people in. The trend that Peter spoke about, we are seeing lots more use of our towpaths as well. More boats, more business activity, increased support, increased income, and hence a virtuous circle of more investment leading to more benefit and more opportunity. But conversely, if we don't have the resources to make that investment, we get captured in a vicious circle. Insufficient investment leading to more failures, more frustration, more people giving up using the canal network, reducing the income we get, reducing the benefit, and of course with less income, the rate of failure would accelerate. So we do stand on the cusp of that virtuous circle or that cycle of decline. And Peter's scenario one would be what beckons as we think about the worst case scenario. It isn't what we would plan for or what we would want, that it is almost the default of what we would get if we can't find that alternative route. The brutal truth is that that is a plausible scenario from where we stand today. Our projections for the funding we would need with the declining grant and the other factors Peter spoke about, compounded by the volatile weather and the impact that's having. We've just come off the back of spending an unplanned 10 million or so on the winter storms, just recovering, repairing, reopening, stuff we weren't planning to do. We've had to find that money and eating into what we can spend into the future this year. And we wrestle with a jeopardy message because actually we do need everyone to be alert to the very real prospect that we could be headed towards that scenario 1 if we don't manage to change something. But of course what we don't want to do is make it self-fulfilling. We don't want to be speaking about how much jeopardy there is and almost cause more distress, create a fatalism that means people give up. Well, I won't bother getting a boat after all. I won't bother with opening that business. I'll sell the business I've got. I'll find somewhere else to spend my time. And of course, that's the worst case of all. We bring about the scenario we're most seeking to avoid. And I suppose just in the last few minutes, I do want to be more optimistic and convince you. I really do think there is an optimistic scenario, a realistic scenario that can take us towards Peter's scenario 2 and the golden age he ended up with. As I see it, the role of the Canal and River Trust at its absolute core is to do whatever we possibly can to find that path and to secure that future. With all of us, those who work for the Trust, all the volunteers and all the partner groups we have, but of course all of you as well, engaging in a collective effort to make sure we keep our network open and alive, available for boats and navigation and for all the other benefits and uses as well. And to do that, we really need to turn this moment where we can contemplate the jeopardy, the risks that we face, into one where we can reimagine a future, where we're able to pivot and adapt and work towards a sustainable future for the waterways, but one in which we need to embrace the opportunities to evolve and change, to be bold while staying practical and purposeful, keeping our feet firmly on the ground so we're not off chasing impossible ideas that never stand the prospect of happening, but actually are very real ways in which we can make our canal network, our waterways relevant to the challenges we face in society today. And that's where we've got a lot of going for us, because we really are, with our geography, with the nature of what we offer, we are very relevant to many of those challenges. And therefore, to bring about scenario 2 or a version of it, we need to embrace this in at least sort of 2 different ways. We do need to change how we operate. And there's effectively 2 strands to this. We need to mobilise volunteers and communities to help us with the general care, everyday maintenance that we need to see across our network. If we can make the presence of a viable, thriving canal important to all the communities we run through, it will mean we can share the load and draw people in to help us do that basic work. And we're doing really well in that. We've had a record year for volunteers. We've seen volunteers develop more ambition to do more work. There's so much more we need to do. And that needs to be married with coming at it from the other way, how we embrace technology and innovation. The world is changing around us fast, and although we need to prize all the history, we absolutely need to grab hold of all those opportunities. So using drones for inspecting, which we're already looking at, there's so much more potential. Using remote monitoring technology with automatic systems and sensors. Using AI to help us diagnose some of that data so we can respond in real time, without needing the same level of resourcing we necessarily have today. And again, there's glimpses of where we're already starting to do that, but with so much more to explore. You're reserving our expert teams for the really high-skilled things only they can do, and embracing other rising, emerging, necessary challenges like decarbonisation, the role that we can play as we change and help society change around us. And so we have got to embrace all the different ways that we can use the network as well. Yes, of course, preserving its traditional use, but not putting that in the way of all the other things it can do. Some of which Peter talks about we're already doing, but we know there's more we can. How we can play an even bigger role in water security and flood alleviation. Use the network we've got to move water around in more sophisticated ways that can help both deal with too much and too little water. How we can support the challenge around nature recovery as we realise just how much we've lost and how much we need to retain, providing that biodiversity corridors in our towns and cities. Contributing to the national health crisis, we have a realisation that a preventative strategy needs to have spaces and access to nature that we can provide in many deprived urban communities. How we think about the role we can play in renewable energy. We've already seen some use of water source heat pumps for cooling, potential to do more. How we can develop hydropower, not just for the large rivers where we've already done some projects, but even on every lock bywash as the technology evolves to make that more efficient. How we can promote our role just being in cities to provide cooling as we deal with more extreme temperatures. How we can support the housing crisis, again thinking about that evolving use we're already seeing on our network to play a role in resolving that as well. And critically for all of those things and more, finding funding models that enables us to secure the feedback loop of funding that means the network can stay sustainable and viable, because that's part of the challenge too. So finally, huge potential to unlock opportunities. We have got to, we're in one of those situations where no change is not an option, and we have to adapt. We have to make a mental shift to recognise that all the possibilities are valid, and we can't turn our back on anything that would give us the opportunity to secure new ways of working, new uses of our network, and particularly new sources of income. In a way, our biggest risk is if we're too cautious. If we're reluctant to change, well then we are facing the kind of vicious circle that will lead us into scenario one. We need to embrace change. We need to be open to all possibilities. And that means marrying the best from our past with the potential for our future. And finally, just very quick, well, how? Well, it is, again, drawing on some of the strength that we've got, which is the foundation that we've got around us, the footfall we have on our towpath, the millions of people who are already actively involved in caring for their local canal, appreciating it, using it, and that gives us a foundation where we can build towards generating the support we need, finding common ground amongst all the users and beneficiaries, and aligning ourselves to campaign to work together for their future. And finally bringing us right back down to today, 2024, we've just had an election announced, you all know that. I'm not going to say canals will be the #1 issue on anyone's agenda, of course not, but we all have a chance with eager candidates wanting our votes to just gently remind them that actually that local canal that they're in, I think is it 229 constituencies, I think, Susie? We have 230 or so riparian MPs. They're all going to want to have their votes, the candidates. So there's a chance to just gently put ourselves on the agenda, and come the other side of the election, we'll be out there looking to make sure that that partnership with government that has to be part of our future success is reignited and renewed as we describe the role we can play, as I talked about earlier. So the next 12 months are really critical. Yes, the next 80 years we need to keep in mind as well, but let's keep focused on what we can change in this next immediate opportunity too. Thanks very much.
Hi, I'm Matthew Britton. I'm just a marina-based boater. I have concerns because for me, at the moment, we need unity amongst our boaters, and unity is strength. And what I find is happening with the way that we're now paying the licence, the way we have the questionnaire, we're creating division amongst the boating community. You've got the liveaboards, the cruisers, the marine-based, the residential, and I just feel that we need to, now more than ever, to have everybody singing from the same sheet. And I think what you're doing in the way you're sort of pointing a finger at the wide beams or pointing a finger at the liveaboards is creating division where we really do need unity.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll compete with the rain. I hope you can hear me. It's obviously not intended to divide. I mean, clearly we've had, going way back, different amounts of different votes based on length, for one thing. We have a lot of arguments about what the fairest model is. Difficult concept, fairness, sometimes, because it's all in the eye of the beholder. Other navigational authorities charge more per area than we do just based on the width. What we try to do in our conceptual is to reflect utility in some broad economic sense. So someone who's got a wider boat is clearly having more benefits because of the space they have available on the water. Someone who is cruising has use of the network all year round. They're not paying for a mooring, they're using the network facilities more. So we think that should be reflected in a slightly higher fee. You know, the surcharge is growing quite modestly year on year, so we've tried to position it so that it feels fair and equitable. There are a range of views around this. We did consult and get a range of views formally into the process. And in a world where we need to generate more income, because we have no choice but to look everywhere for income, we think we're striking the right balance. I know not everyone will be convinced by that, but we genuinely are trying to make sure we look for everyone to make what is a reasonable contribution based on the type of use they have and the space on the boat that they use.